Welcome to Cosmos Chronicles episode 8, and I'm joined by brainjar from Composable today, and it's quite a unique video compared to the normal because most people in Cosmos are used to hearing about Cosmos chains, but Composable is actually built on Polkadot, but they are going IBC enabled, or you are IBC enabled, and dealing with cross chain. So if you can just explain a little bit about yourself, brainjar, and we'll go carry on from there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder and CEO of Composable. We started in 2021. Our mission has been, how can we bring ecosystem agnostic transactions, right? So I think one of the things that we've seen with things like DYDX and friends.tech and stuff like that is people really care about, an agnostic experience. Like, how can we do something on chain that doesn't feel like I'm doing 25,000 different steps to do a simple transaction? And even though it's 2023, we still are a pretty long ways away from offering these experiences to people. Like, we have a couple of examples, but I think for the most part, we're still very much so limited by the infrastructure that we have to actually do these agnostic transactions. And so Composable's mission from day one was basically, execute anywhere, anytime, with any money, basically. And I think, the primitives necessary to make this happen is like, a communication layer, a processing layer, and, the actual UX. And so for us, the first thing that we've been focused on is this communication layer. And for us, IBC makes all these other pieces of the stack possible. And so the first ecosystem we decided to connect to was to make IBC enabled was Polkadot, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Like, we want all networks to become IBC enabled so that eventually, however long from now, you can open up an application, you can fund a wallet on any chain and be able to do basically anything, like ape into Stargaze NFTs from like Base or something. And so I think like long term, our focus is going to be, this like processing layer for digital assets.
Yeah, no, perfect. So so from a user perspective, it's basically trying to build, like you say, the tools and the UX so that I can go and use any chain I want, and I don't have to really feel like I'm going around having to learn them different chains. It's all through one sort of UX. So no, that's amazing. Can you just explain a little bit more about Composable and the networks on Composable, and obviously what you're building and benefiting for users?
Yeah, for sure. So we started out as a Polkadot and Kusama parachain. So our Polkadot parachain is called the Composable parachain. Our Kusama parachain is called Picasso. And then what we realized is if we're going to go full frontal IBC, we're going to build a Cosmos chain as our hub for IBC connections everywhere. So right now our Centuri chain is in production, and basically, it's the chain that other chains connect to access Polkadot. In the future, it'll be the chain that other chains connect to access Ethereum and, Avalanche and some other things in the future as more and more ecosystems become IBC enabled. And so I think for us, the majority of our infrastructure now is going to be focused on building out these IBC connections on this Cosmos chain and utilizing the Polkadot security model for interesting applications, such as, some processing layer stuff that I can speak more about, et cetera. But I think we're excited to be a part of the Cosmos. We've been thinking a lot about ICS, for instance, for our Centuri chain. So I think over time we're definitely starting to look more of like a interchain project as opposed to a parachain in the early days.
Yeah, so Centuri. So you're building Centuri on Cosmos, and then that'll obviously connect to Picasso on Dot, and then that'll be like the highway to send all your IBC transactions, everything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, perfect. So what would the benefits be for users, sort of on Picasso? Like, will sort of Yeah, it's hard to. It's like you say, it's quite confusing because obviously
Yeah.
I'm so used to just Cosmos. I mean, what will be the main benefits, shall I say, then of being able to do cross chain transactions between Dart and Cosmos chains and things like that?
Yeah, so I think Cosmos has Atom and soon USDC and has USDT. Um, and then the majority of all other assets that people care about, I guess, aside from like Osmo and the native tokens of the chains, are bridged assets from ETH because of Axelar. And so my belief is, when things like Noble launch and you don't need actual USDC anymore, and when we actually launch, ETH IBC as well, um, the need for blue chip money that is not centralized stable coins will become higher. And so having access to DOT, to NEAR, to Solana, to ETH, to WBTC, and everything sort of flowing within the Cosmos ecosystem, I think is a net benefit for Cosmos because, these applications, you want to expand the use cases for them, of course. And so for Polkadot users, however, I think the difficult thing has always been, what do I do with my funds? And I think that there have been some prominent Polkadot parachains that have popped up that have done, dexes and whatnot, but for the most part, there's not a lot to do with your DOT. And so the hope is if we can get DOT into Cosmos and we show people what's possible, minting IST off DOT, we have a proposal for that, loans on Mars or UMI, even things like perps for Levana, like these things, I think people will then understand, okay, DOT is now another asset that I can get exposure to, that I can use in Cosmos, but isn't necessarily Atom. And so I think like for Polkadot users, they're excited to bring their funds over to actually access DeFi for, I wouldn't say for the first time, but to the scale that Cosmos is at.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, is it because I'm not very familiar with Polkadot. Can you explain what the differences are with the security? So why did you originally go and build on Dot? What like lured you there? But then what attracted you to Cosmos after to then utilize IBC if that's okay?
Yeah. So I think the execute. So first of all, like Polkadot has the most security of any network because they have billions of dollars staked on the relay chain. And so arguably it is the most secure network, in the history of mankind. And so for us, when we were building bridging infrastructure, we wanted to headquarter it in Polkadot originally. But I think over time, we noticed that there is more and more interest in people doing things in DeFi in Cosmos than there was in Polkadot, I think, because the majority of Polkadot use cases center around staking. So you stake for like a pretty high APY. And I think people were kind of excited about DeFi. There was Akala, there was Moonbeam, but there's just been a bunch of exploits in the ecosystem, like Nomad really destroyed the Moonbeam, ecosystem. I think also there was like a really crazy exploit for AUSD, which was supposed to become the stable coin of, the Polkadot ecosystem minted off of DOT. And this also was exploited. And so I think people now are just like, okay, should I take the risk or should I just, stake my DOT? And so I think now with Cosmos, these things have been in production for years, right? Like Osmosis has been around for years. So, if I go swap on Osmosis, that's a much more fluid experience for people than swapping in, some DEX that just launched like 2 months ago or something.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, do you think, because obviously one of the talking points is always about sovereignty in Cosmos, and obviously I assume with Polkadot you have parachains, so it's like a shared security all the time. So I wonder whether that was, I wonder whether that's why Cosmos is able to unlock DeFi in a sense more, because like you say, you can, like, people need to understand it's an ecosystem of ecosystems. So yeah, we've got many planets with many cities on and things like that. I just wanted to touch back earlier because it's something I did notice that I was reading, was you mentioned about near protocol and taking IBC to near protocol. So is that something that you're already doing and working on at the moment?
Yes, we got a grant for this, I think 6 months ago. So we are working on this actively. I think our priority is ETH, but after ETH, L2s and near and BNB are things we're looking at.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So something else, what was I looking at here? Well, yeah, so another question was, other than yourselves, what other ecosystems do you think will be using like the cross-chain ecosystem sort of bridging, so IBC?
Yeah, I mean, I think ETH is going to be a big one, but to be honest, I think the degen chains like BNB, I think, is a really good candidate, right? Because they want to do things in Cosmos. They want to move around. There's also a lot of cross-pollination in the communities between BNB and Cosmos. And so I think that that's definitely something that we're exploring and in general should be explored. Also, there's a team working on Avalanche IBC. I think that is interesting because, Trader Joe is a pretty big DEX that people like to use in general. Also, AVAX was like a really big ecosystem, 9 months ago, bull market times. And they're doing a bunch of cool things with like subnets and real world assets and whatever. So I think Avalanche could be a really good candidate as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Like you say. So, well, yeah. Again, I mean, can you just explain what like cross ecosystem interoperability is? Because obviously IBC is the standard within Cosmos, where it's a communication between blockchains. But like you say, it's quite slightly more technical, I assume, when you're trying to connect completely different ecosystems.
Yeah. So essentially, IBC is based on light client verification, right? And so essentially, you have a light client of chain B on chain A and a light client of chain A on chain B. And then if you're able to, relay consensus proofs between these two different chains, the light client on chain B verifies things about chain A and vice versa. Now you have IBC working. And so this already happens in Cosmos out of the box because you have this package called IBC Go that you just put into Cosmos chains, and now you have IBC right out of the gate. And so for other ecosystems to adopt IBC, they need similar infrastructure. And the problem is like no one's actually built that infrastructure. And so we had to build, a light client of Polkadot to put on a Cosmos chain and a light client of a Cosmos chain to put it on a Polkadot chain. And so it's quite a bit of work because you also have to like meld what you're doing to the ecosystem that you're trying to connect to. So for instance, like if you try to use Hermes right now, the Rust relayer that everybody uses to relay packets between Cosmos chains, if you were to use this same relayer between Polkadot and Cosmos, it doesn't work. Why? Because the relayer is not updated to include this new type of connection. And so all the infrastructure changes necessary to make IBC enabled takes a lot of time. And that's why it's really hard. That's why you don't really see IBC everywhere until now.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So going back to Centuri, obviously Centuri is going to be the main chain within Cosmos to then connect to Polkadot. Is this going to be the same? Is it going to be the same with Near Protocol and Avalanche and things like that? So obviously Centuri is going to be like the main, say, port for everyone to go, and then to be able to bridge to all these different ecosystems.
Yes, I think so. And I think if we have, alignment with the hub by being an ICS consumer chain, I think that's we make the hub the port for IBC. with Centuri, basically.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. No, that's great. Another little thing I did read up about. I didn't go too far into it, but something about hyperspace.
Mhm.
What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so we had to build our own relayer, right? Because Hermes and the Go relayer don't support the new connections,
Yep.
and so we had to build a brand new relayer from scratch. It's open source. We've given it to the informal team and a bunch of other teams in the ecosystem, so they can run the relayer. But I would like to see Hermes and other relayers eventually adopt similar architectures to hyperspace, so that like people who already are familiar with Hermes and know how to run Hermes can just like update Hermes, and now suddenly you have the ability to send packets back and forth.
Yeah, no, that's great. Perfect. So, yeah, I don't think there's too much more to cover because, like you say, we've covered a lot of the basics, and yeah, I don't think a lot of my audience will be like deep dive technical guys. I want to just try and cover the basics. But what is there? So, when can we expect to see Centuri on mainnet? When are we going to start hearing about it on Twitter and things like that? Is there
Yeah,
any news you can give towards that?
yeah. So it's actually fully in production already. You can actually, as of yesterday, you can swap dot for Osmo on Osmosis with one click. So you can bridge dot over to your Kepler with a single transaction, and then swap on Osmosis. So right now in production, we have Astroport pools on Neutron as well. We're setting up pools on Shade Swap. Um, what else is there? We've put up proposals for dot as collateral for IST, dot as collateral for UMI and Mars as well. And then I think the big thing that we hope to turbocharge all these efforts is we've just put up a proposal from the Polkadot Treasury side, where we ask the Polkadot Treasury for 1 million dot as a loan through using Time Waves covenant contracts. And basically this dot would get deployed across different protocols within Cosmos. First, primarily Osmosis, so that the pool is like 500K worth of dot Osmo, and then use that liquidity to then bootstrap more interest in dot as an asset for like collateral, for things like Nolis, for instance.
Yeah, borrowing, lending, perps, all them sort of things, like you say. So yeah, just
Yeah,
it's like you say. Yeah, you guys are basically unlocking more utility for Dot. So
yeah,
yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think we can probably leave it at that today, and maybe we can come back once Centuri, once you've got like like the UX is all sorted, everything's up and
yeah.
running. Maybe we can come back in a couple of months, do a little demo or something, show some people how to bridge their dot over to Cosmos or vice versa, and yeah, maybe do something then if you're happy to do that.
Yeah, sure. Anytime.
Yeah, perfect. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, and yeah, I look forward to having you on in the future.
Yeah, thank you.